Hey all, it's your girl Aaron, and I wanted to talk about USA politics again a bit today. And I'm going to be talking about Bernie Sanders and and sexism. Now, we've seen a lot of talk about Bernie and sexism. We had Elizabeth Warren saying that Bernie was sexist for telling her allegedly that a woman couldn't win the presidency. And there's often a narrative that Bernie's supporters are um, very sort of toxic and not very nice people, and it's kind of implying Bernie bros like they, you know, kind of sexist. It's an implication as well. It was used against Bernie with Hillary, where people were saying that Bernie supporters were sexist and that's why they chose him. And then Elizabeth Warren tried the same thing. But a lot of people have said, like, well, no, Bernie's obviously not sexist. Like, look at how much he stood up for things like abortion rights and wanting to have civil liberties or civil rights, at least, for people equally, and wanted every person to be valued, to have like universal policies instead of things that are like means tested or something. So, in terms of platform, in terms of politics, it's clear like Bernie is far more helpful to the feminist movement or to you know equal treatment of people of different genders than any of the other candidates. But at the same time, we are now coming to a point where it's just Bernie and Biden left, and Biden has some pretty serious allegations against him. He's been credibly accused of rape recently, and it's like the eighth person who's come forward to report that he sexually harassed or assaulted them. And obviously, it hasn't really gotten much attention, but if they are going to continue trying to cover it up and not talk about it and wait for Trump to be the one to popularize it, make it popular, and cost Biden the election. Like, I don't know if that's actually what their strategy is. It might be, but where it's relevant to us and relevant to Bernie and his supporters is, I think, if it comes to a point where Bernie doesn't win, and now I really want Bernie to win the nomination. I think the world will be a lot better off if he does. And you can go look at my previous videos about why. I even think, in terms of things like getting towards anarchism and socialism, that Bernie winning is actually going to move us closer there. Even though electoral politics doesn't achieve it on its own, it can make the environment better and empower people more to follow that kind of vision. So I definitely want Bernie to win. But if he doesn't, what he's told us, what he's told his supporters and everyone, is that he's going to get behind whoever the nominee is, campaign for them, and try and get his supporters and the movement that he's been sort of the figurehead of to support Joe Biden, and always telling us that it is because of Trump and the need to get rid of Trump. Now, I think personally, my own personal opinion is that now, with Biden as the nominee, potentially, if he did get the nomination, would be the perfect time to have a third party. I think Bernie leading a ticket on a third party could actually win against Biden versus Trump. He could get more votes than either of them. So even if it's just like Bernie getting 36, Trump getting like 35, and Biden getting like 34 or whatever, like, I think Bernie can win in the third party scenario, even though we have all the two party like rigging and the fact that it's way more difficult for a third party to actually win. There's the electoral system and all that. But the thing is, like, we're talking about a moment that is different to everything else. We're talking about a pandemic and Medicare for all. We're talking about the economy crashing and it being workers or corporations getting the money. We're talking about Bernie, who has almost won the nomination, but is looking like the rigging against him is going to prevail, maybe because they are covering up for Biden and not actually showing people why he's such a worse candidate than Bernie, why he will get defeated by Trump, where Bernie has a very strong chance of beating Trump. So the media is unfortunately covering up for Biden, and they are corporate owned, the mainstream media, so it's understandable. But that context means that I think Bernie could actually do it. If he ran on a third party ticket, he could actually win the presidency. I honestly believe that, and I think it would be, people would finally have someone to vote for. They would finally have a party that isn't just the same corporate. There's like a bird trying to compete with me up with a recording. Come on. There's a lot of birds around right now. But yeah, so given that I believe that it's possible for Bernie to actually win as a third party candidate, win the presidency, I think it's possible. I think the movement, I think people will get behind him in unprecedented numbers. Not if he joins the Greens or the Libertarian Party. If there was a progressive party where the platform was the Green New Deal, Medicare for all, getting corruption out of the electoral system, etc., that will actually draw support away from both of the other parties, as well as appeal to independents and Bernie's base. I think it's more realistic than thinking Biden can win. So if he doesn't do that, which he said that he's not going to, and he actually tries to get us to vote for Biden, it's not that it's his only choice. He's making that strategic decision not to go third party. Maybe it's cowardice, maybe it's maths that he has different to what I have, but either way, it's still a decision being made. And so that's why I think it's relevant if Bernie is telling people to get behind somebody who is a rapist, who has sexually assaulted people, who's been creepy. We've all seen the videos and the GIFs. I'm not even talking about his cognitive abilities right now. Just on the fact that Joe Biden is so clearly a sexist that he's sort of brought into question whether he would even uphold abortion rights. And you know, he's super like paternalistic. He's very patriarchal. So, you know, if Bernie does tell people to get behind him and to vote for him, then whether his record might not be one of sexism, but that will be Bernie being sexist. That will be Bernie trying to, by his decision, will be harming the movement for, you know, feminism. He will be going against what is right for the women of the country and people who are not men all over the world, and in the US. Like, basically, you can't get the movement to endorse a rapist, because if they do, they lose their moral authority. Bernie's movement will be tarnished forever if it continues to be Bernie's movement after Bernie told us to support a rapist. So we need to actually be getting ready to jump ship if Bernie does that, because we can't allow the movement to be killed by it, and it will die. The right wing, the corporate media, etc., not only will they thoroughly defeat Biden and get Trump re-elected, but they will make Bernie's movement seem like it's on board with all that kind of nonsense, that it is lying when it's saying that it wants liberation for women, etc. And you won't be able to say, well, you know, oh, the Republicans are all corrupt and stuff, when you have someone who's like, you know, like a literal rapist, like, as the Democratic nominee. So even if Biden won, even if Bernie told his movement to back Biden and Biden won, even then, I think it would kill Bernie's movement, because if the movement gets behind a rapist, you know, it's not a movement for all people, it's a movement for men, you know, because it's not excusable. It might be excusable for men because they are brought up with like rape culture and toxic masculinity and all that. And although Bernie hasn't been like that himself very much, it's not impossible that there's some internalized not taking it seriously enoughness in him. And so he might actually not be taking these allegations seriously enough. He might not actually be believing them. And if he does believe them and he tells his movement to get behind it, that's even worse. So it's either like a minimization or a not taking seriously enough of issues like this, of trying to push forward for things like Me Too and Time's Up and trying to get people held accountable. If you're just going to reward someone who's done those kinds of things with another presidency, and whoever's behind that effort to make that happen is not going to be seen by people who maybe haven't voted before. They're not really politically engaged, and you go to them, you're like, well, like, we're going to try and take over the Democratic Party now. It's like, wait, you were part of the group of people that got Biden nominated, and now he wants to take away our abortion rights, and he's a rapist, and you're part of that. It's you can't build a movement on that kind of thing. You have to build a movement on social justice, and there's nothing just about ignoring those allegations. There's nothing just about trying to beat Trump because you're too scared to run in a third party, rather than, nominating a rapist. So I hope Bernie doesn't do it, but he's said all along that he's going to support the nominee. And although I agree with that on the Democratic front, where it's like you want the person with the most votes to win, I also think there's things that are disqualifying. And if the things that are disqualifying get covered up and swept under the rug, and if Bernie knows about them, which we know he obviously does, he has staff who are well aware of all that kind of thing. And so he's asked about it in interviews, I'd hope, like he should be being asked about it. So if he knows about it and he wants to get behind that, then we got to leave him behind. We got to say, like, okay, Bernie, like, you tried really hard, you fought your whole life, but now that you didn't get the nomination, you're letting yourself go, you're compromising your principles, and you're being unethical telling people to support Biden. And the thing is, he might be scared of Trump's far right-wing rhetoric, but the reality is Biden is nothing but a far-right recruiter's dream. So either way, if Trump wins or if Biden wins, either way the far right are winning. So the only way that the left can actually win is if a progressive wins, which is if it has to be in a third party. If both Biden and Trump are the nominees, there's no progressive offered. So if you really want to fight the far right, it is a third party that you need to do. And you got to stand up when it counts. And people have been angry with Bernie for not standing up to things, and sometimes there is political calculations and sometimes they weren't correct. But with something as serious as this, it's not overlooked, and there's no kinds of political calculations that can excuse it. It's a matter of principle. Either you can get behind someone like that or you can't. And if you can, you're an enemy of a movement that wants to have men held accountable and to answer for what they've done. And that doesn't mean we can never give people like a second chance or not, but look at how Biden's handling it. He's not repentant. He hasn't spent his life trying to change his ways and become like a champion of women's rights to try and, like, I don't know, make up a little bit for the damage he did before. Like, no, he's all the way up until now, he's still acting in these creepy ways. Like, he's not turning around anytime soon, and he's probably going to die being like a creepy, like, potentially pedo-y, definitely rapey guy. Like, you can't support that. And so if that's who the Democrats nominate, and if that's who Bernie gets behind, we need a bail on Bernie. We need a Bern exit and a Dem exit. And even if a third party doesn't win, you're killing your movement out of fear of Trump by not trying it, in my opinion, because you need a progressive to be on the ballot. Otherwise, you've lost already. If you don't even have a progressive on the ballot, the election is already lost. And if it were someone like Hillary versus Trump, then you'd be like, okay, harm reduction. But there's no harm reduction to be had with Biden. The fact of him being president after these allegations, that is harm. Like, that is harm that is not worth making that call for, especially because if you actually tried to build something that was actually about social justice, that actually was going to treat those things as disqualifying, then you would go ahead and do that. You wouldn't nominate Biden. You would go and do a third party, and you can go back on a promise to a bunch of corrupt people easily. But you're turning your back on the entire movement, on the entire feminist movement, on the entire intersectional movement. You're turning your back on that if you endorse the person those corrupt people want you to. So yeah, that's just my thoughts. I hope the cars weren't too noisy here. We actually are in lockdown, so it's a little bit more busy than I think it should be. So that's a bit concerning. But I've been practicing social distancing myself for a number of weeks now, even before we went into lockdown, just playing it safe and trying not to be part of the problem. So yeah, anyway, that's pretty much it for today. Thanks for watching.